We're now joined by a very special guest. It's the head coach of the number 2 ranked team in the entire country, the Duke Blue Devils. That's John Danowski. Coach, how you doing on this Thursday morning?
Awesome. I got to get the house ready. I got a guy coming over to do some work, so I had to get up early this morning.
Let's talk about your guys' season so far. It's been after last year, could be classified as a bounce back. What has the year been like here in 2023?
It's been a lot of fun since day one. I think everybody came back in August. Really excited to be back. Practice was a little different in terms of a little more focus on the fundamentals. We worked all the way up until the last possible day in December before final exams, when the NCAA shuts you down. But I think, we had a lot of fun, and I think it was fun because the guys were, it was just, they were always excited to be out there. They like each other, and they were very coachable from day one this year.
Coming back from last year where it was deemed quote unquote a down year for the ACC, what are the challenges of playing in such a competitive league where three of the teams are in the top 5 in the country? We talked to Virginia coaches Lars Tiffany last week, and he said the league's kind of been better than it has been in a while. What is your kind of opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, the ACC has always been, even when I was at Hofstra, the ACC was a dominant conference, and when they only had 4 teams, and there was only those couple of years when we had 6, before Maryland left, and so lacrosse has always been a unique part of the ACC fabric, and it's always, last year was, I think just an outlier, one of those years, and whether it's the pandemic still. I think for athletics in general, lacrosse specifically, the pandemic has messed around with roster sizes, transfers, and then now you throw in the transfer portal. It makes it really interesting, I think, to either maintain your culture, instill your culture in a very short period of time with people who have been indoctrinated in other places for 4 years. In some respects, it's not easy, and I think coaches are adapting, players are adapting. Change is the key word for sure.
You mentioned the transfer portal. What has that been like dealing with last few years, and how do you balance using the transfer portal versus still recruiting high school kids, because you have the option of taking an experienced player who's played in college, knows the physicality of the game, versus the unproven nature of a high school kid, but you do get the chance to instill and develop that culture over a longer period of time?
I think that the things that we value in terms of commitment, loyalty. And I know the door swings both ways, with coaches and players, and now students have much more freedom, certainly than they've ever had. At Duke, it's a little more unique in that we only have 9 admission spots per year, and so we have to kind of be right, in terms of who we recruit as an under, and nobody leaves here. We have a very little attrition rate. In 17 years, I think we've only had 3 students who we recruited leave the program. So we don't have undergraduate, transfer opportunities. But we do have the grad transfer opportunities, the Fuqua School of Business, the IT program. Some of our master's programs are desirable, to those high-end students. And that makes it interesting. It's we have some really talented kids who are interested. We have 3 fifth-years this year, which was really a blessing. That it's a smaller number. Our goalie, we have a face-off man, Jamie Zusi, and then Tommy Schelling from Lehigh, and all 3 of them have fit in really, really well.
Looking at the schedule, Duke usually plays more games than some teams. This year specifically, having to play Virginia twice, Syracuse twice, playing Denver. What has this year's schedule been like to prepare game in, game out?
Yeah, one of my philosophies, and we could do it at Hofstra because we're on Long Island. We can do it at Duke. I think, because of our, the weather and our willingness to travel. Kids want to play games. They don't want to practice 5 days a week. If you ask somebody, if you ask a player, would you rather practice on Tuesday or would you rather play a game? They'll tell you they want to play a game. With all that being said, you have to be willing to lose every once in a while because that's going to happen. The more opportunities, but the more opportunities kids have, the more experience they get, the hope is the more confidence that they receive. Playing Virginia twice is not easy. Playing Syracuse twice is not easy. Beating a good team 2 times in one season is a feat in and of itself. And so the possibilities. We tell the guys all the time, you can play them a third time. You can play Virginia a third time. You can play Syracuse a third time. If things break a certain way. So it's you take it one game at a time. We always, one of our kind of mantras around here is this. This is the biggest game of the year because it's the next game. And just try to. And then just try to take that week to week, because that's what you have to focus on.
With the way you guys have played throughout the year, I'd say it's pretty certain that Duke will be playing in the postseason. So what are these last couple of games? What is the motivation that you try to instill in your players to, not take games off and continue to play for, things like an ACC title, things like seeding in the NCAA tournament? How do you keep the level of intensity up, even though you guys pretty much know you're going to be playing into May?
One of the things for this week is interesting because we had a mid-season bye, which, is rare. It's really, you don't want to really give up a Saturday in April as the weather starts to turn nicer. But because of, conference play, it's hard to find a non-conference opponent in April, on a Saturday, because they have those conference teams have their big games on Saturdays or on the weekends. So, so we're coming off that. So we haven't played in 2 weeks. So there's a natural excitement about, man, we got to play again. So that's just organic. That's happening, just in itself. This is an opportunity for this particular team, to perhaps share, an ACT championship. If Notre Dame wins out and we win out, the way it works, even though head-to-head Notre Dame beat us, we would be co-champions. So to be a champion in the ACC is a big deal. Just maybe it's more symbolic, because we don't have an AQ, but it's more symbolic than anything else. But that's part of the motivation. And the other thing is playing in Koskinen, last home game, Saturday afternoon. That, and playing Syracuse. One of the most vaunted, tradition-based programs in the history of our sport. That should be, that should be motivation enough for sure.
Looking at the roster, everyone usually points to Brendan O'Neill, former #1 overall recruit, has about 65 points, really balanced scoring and assists. What is it like coaching a guy that can score but also distribute the ball as well?
Brendan is one of the most unique individuals I've ever been around. He is absolutely selfless in terms of he's not interested in notoriety. He's not interested in personal achievements. He is. I've never met somebody with a skill set like him, who is, just team win oriented. And we say to him, we have to say to him often, Brendan, we'll tell you if you're shooting too much. It's okay to shoot the ball, and he doesn't want to take the limelight, and sometimes, you need him to. Sometimes we tell guys, the whole team, we want to be selfless, right? We want to be team oriented, but sometimes being team oriented means you have to be a little selfish. You have to make an individual play. You have to, do something that's, that you're capable of doing, of course. So he is, he's so much fun to be around. And, it's almost like sometimes we have to, kick him in the butt and tell him, listen, man, it's okay.
Is there a specific moment you remember from this season where you had to do that and maybe it made a difference in a game or something that happened?
No, I mean, just by the nature, if you guys watch enough lacrosse, a left-handed attackman, there are plays come to them, whether it's transition, whether it's man up, whether it's off the face-off. The left-handed, it's wild. And then it's not necessarily true of the right-hander, on the wing. But the lefties, the ball comes to them, and I can't really remember a time this year, but I do know that we're going to need him to really to really hone in at the end of the season, at the end of this, as we wind down.
You mentioned as we wind down, Coach, you have won 3 national championships. You have that national championship experience going all the way to Memorial Day weekend. How does that experience help in a year like this year, where you're expected to probably make a run, given that you're at the top of the country so far?
I think one of the things when I first got here, I had no experience at this level, and I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I really didn't. Very similar to coaching, the world team in 2018. You have no idea the first time you do it, and then the second time you recognize that there are probably some subtleties and some things that are important. But to me, what's most important is that the guys are having fun every day. That they're engaged and that you're doing things. You're not predictable as a coach. You're trying to pull things out of your hat, and you're trying to, you're just trying to make the whole experience fun, because, looking back, when they come back for their 10-year reunion or 20-year reunion, they're not going to remember necessarily the scores or the points or the saves, but they are going to remember the experiences, good and bad. They're going to remember, getting lit up, in the film room, which is always their favorite, kind of topic, when the coach, loses it in the film room, or, something, or going to the movies together, or, doing something that was, was just, being together.
When you won that first national title, what was that feeling like?
It was really surreal. There were 2 things that I thought about right away, immediately. One is, who do we play next? I don't want to stop. We have to stop now. Can we keep going? And then 2 was, I thought about all the coaches that I coached with and against who never are lucky enough. I was lucky to get to Duke. Something had to happen in 06 for me to show up on campus. And so I thought about all the guys who do such a great job coaching, and probably better coaches than I am, but they never get to experience something like this, just because of circumstance. Maybe the place they're at, but they are and I thought about all those guys, all those men that are just fabulous coaches, and those are kind of the 2 things that I thought about immediately.
You mentioned unique experiences. You're one of the few coaches that have coached for U.S. men's lacrosse. How has that impacted you coaching in college? Have you brought any kind of experiences that you had with the U.S. team to Duke?
Yeah, one of the things that I realized, the guys, the older guys, they want to be coached. When we were in Israel, we did a lot of, we would grade the films. We would give the guys grades the next day. We would work on the things that we needed to work on. We had standards, with each part of the game, whether it was, half field offense, half field defense, man up, man down, in the box, the face-off game, wing play. And they loved being coached. They loved the structure of what went on, because in the PLL or the MLL at the time, you get together the night before a game. You can't even practice because you only have 20 guys on the team, so you can't even go full field, and you show up and you play a game, and then you show up the next week in another city somewhere. So just by the nature of the beast, in professional lacrosse, there's not a lot of preparation that goes on. There's not a lot of feedback, and so for us, you recognize that they loved to be coached.
You mentioned being in Israel, and I think of Israel, the first thing I think of is definitely not lacrosse. What was it like just being there, the environment, the atmosphere? What was that experience like?
It was, I don't have an articulate enough vocabulary to explain how incredible it was. The first night you land, you leave at midnight, and you get there at 5 in the evening, and that's so the first thing is, your body clock, your biological clock is way off. And the second day, you get in a bus and you go to Jerusalem. And while you're all hyped about this lacrosse event, you're walking around, a place where, Christ was crucified and resurrected, and you just can't help but feel and you're at the Wailing Wall, and you realize that there's a lot more, to life than just lacrosse. And then you hunker down, and the number of times that we had said to each other, the coaches looked at each other and said, we're coaching lacrosse in Israel, like in the Middle East. I mean, it was a surreal experience. It was incredible. I would have never had, stepped foot in the Middle East if it wasn't for our sport. And I'm very grateful, that we were given that opportunity.
As someone who went to Israel within the last few months, and Jordan did as well, I speak for him when I say it was a absolutely surreal experience as well, and I feel exactly the same way about it as you did. One last thing before we let you go, let's get back and focus on Saturday's game. If there's a key for Duke to get its second win over Syracuse this season, I know the first game was very close, went to overtime. What is it for the Blue Devils to get it done?
We've got to be fundamentally sound everywhere. If you look at the statistics, Syracuse kind of gets out statistics, if you could say, in a bunch of games, but they're in all the games. Carolina dominated statistically, but Syracuse won the game. That they are such good playmakers. They are so talented and so skilled that if you're not fundamentally sound in every aspect, riding, clearing, face-off, ground balls, they're going to stay in the game, and they're going to keep competing and keep playing. And it doesn't matter if you have a lead. Even last week, against Syracuse, against Virginia, they're going to come back. They're going to keep playing. And there's going to be highlight reels when you play Syracuse, right? There's something that's going to be on Top 10 Sports Center, and you can't allow that to affect the next play. And so for us, it's just about being fundamentally sound for 60 minutes.
That's Duke men's lacrosse head coach John Danowski, the winningest lacrosse coach in Division I NCAA lacrosse history. We talked, Duke's season so far, and then we even got all the way to the Middle East. You never know where things will go here on the Ostrom Avenue podcast. Coach Danowski, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, guys, this was a pleasure talking lacrosse. Anytime you want to call me, let's talk some more.